Welcome to Embracing Diversity and English Language Development in Your Program, a course for directors and administrators. This is a Building Programs, Building Brains course developed by BostNet in partnership with UMass Boston, with support from the Department of Early Education and Care here in Massachusetts, and brain building is in progress. Please feel free to hover over any of the logos on this slide to learn more. This is the plan. Bringing your goal to life. To explore the difference between a vision and a goal, hover your mouse over each of the two pictures and think about the two statements there and consider your own opinions. And when you're ready, click Done to move on to the next slide. The vision is important because you draw your inspiration from your vision. In times where you're feeling that the team is losing their motivation or their focus, you go back to that vision and it helps you reconnect with why you're working so hard on these goals and outcomes. But the goal is important because from the goal you draw the concrete specific plan and the outcomes that you're going to measure and accomplish. And the goal should feel like you're taking a step down a meaningful path that leads to someday achieving the vision. Being able to have a connection between a larger vision and the goal that you're working on is super, super important because this is what makes the process of program quality improvement feel meaningful and exciting rather than feeling like just obligations piled on obligations and standards piled on standards and expectations piled on expectations until you're buried in work, which is sometimes how staff end up feeling about this sort of thing, the program improvement and goals and that sort of thing. So this connection between vision and goal is essential to avoiding that trap of just feeling like you're piling work on top of work. Great, you have a vision and you have a goal. Now the next piece is how do you turn that into a plan? How do you make your vision into reality one step at a time? How do you turn your goal into an actual truth in your program by making it happen? The first step is to take a look at the time frame and the outcomes that are embedded in the goal. And looking at that end date, work backwards to set milestones. What are the logical steps to reaching those outcomes that you've set? Then for each of those logical steps, you're going to figure out who's responsible for it, who's in charge of it. And trying to make sure that different people have ownership of different steps is not only going to build investment in your plan, but it's also going to signal to your team that you want everybody to take a part of the work and everyone to feel like that workload is shared. So do not exclude yourself from that process, but also do not put all of the responsibility at your own feet. Make sure that everybody has partial ownership by giving different milestones or different goals to different people. And then for each step, for each milestone, think about what's needed in order for that person to succeed. How much time do they need and how are you going to offer them that time? What kinds of materials, equipment, supplies, stuff do they need in order to reach the goal? Sometimes they don't need any stuff and sometimes they need lots of stuff if they're creating or revising learning stations, for instance. What training do they need, if any? Certainly there are a lot of different ways to get training these days. So there's the online classes and face-to-face classes, but you could also have a coach come into your program, or you could have somebody in your program who already has experience mentoring staff that have less experience. Then what kind of support are they going to need? Are they going to need an extra pair of hands, an extra pair of eyes? Are they going to need to get other staff to respond to requests that they have to turn things into them or to help them create things? And how are you going to help assure that they get the support that they need from the rest of the team? And finally, what kinds of organization or documentation strategies are they going to be putting in place? If they're, let's say, creating lesson plans is great, but do you have a central repository for them? Do you have a binder or a drawer where lesson plans go so that they can be reused from year to year? If they're working on a policy with you, do they have access to a place where all of the policies go and the proper documentation formatting that you use so that this policy looks and works like the other policies that are already in place? So make sure that you think about those pieces as you're assigning work so that people just don't feel like they're trying to accomplish their milestones in a vacuum. Motivation is also a really big piece of this, especially if you're adding responsibility or adding work onto existing responsibility and existing work. You have your goal and you have your plan, but then you want to think about how you keep people excited about it, how you keep people moving forward. And part of that is going to be monitoring, making sure that you're checking in with people regularly to see if they're progressing towards their goals and to make sure that they have everything that they need. That will make them feel like you care. But you also want to think about ways to reward effort when you see it and to celebrate success when it occurs. So think about what kinds of celebrations you can offer, what kinds of rewards, and that could be simple things like praise, or it can be things like a party or a gathering, or it can be more subtle things like you'll step into their classroom for 15 minutes and give them a break because they've been working so hard on something. Think about how you're going to celebrate at the end, too. What is going to be the sort of capstone celebration, whether it's even something as simple as getting to make an announcement to the kids or to the parents about something wonderful that they get to start doing or having as a result of this work, or an unveiling ceremony for a new learning station. Also, use the staff motivation survey, which we've placed into your course room in this unit. You can administer this by handing it out to staff and having them fill it out anonymously, or you can just browse through it for ideas. But it's a really great tool for getting a sense for what ways of motivating your staff are going to be the most effective for the people, the personalities that you have in your program. Then make sure that you're building all these pieces, these milestones, the rewards, the celebrations, right into your implementation plan. They should be right in there. And the reason for that is because if the staff are aware that motivation is a big piece of what you're thinking about in your plan, then they'll be able to focus on that. They'll see that caring is there. They'll see that thoughtfulness on your part is there, and that will also help them keep their own energy up as they work towards accomplishing this goal. There are 3 core principles that really help when you're managing change, when you're having something new happening in your program that might be a little difficult for staff to deal with or to add on or to process. So hover your mouse over each picture to learn about the 3 core strategies that you can use in order to manage change and keep staff energized as you move forward with your plan. And then when you're done, click Done. Communication is also an essential element of bringing a plan to fruition. So as you craft your plan, be sure that you're thinking about ways to keep the lines of communication open. Create an atmosphere in the program where you are perceived by your team as a resource rather than as a barrier. A big element of that is making sure that when people come to you with frustrations or barriers or problems or challenges of their own, you're not immediately going straight to problem solving, but instead you're making space to hear and validate their frustrations. Sometimes people will be coming to you because they really want you to help them solve a problem, in which case a simple acknowledgement, that sounds really frustrating, let's sit down and fix this problem together. But acknowledging that that is frustrating or that it's stressful or that it's exhausting or upsetting in some way is important. But sometimes people will come to you just because they need someone that they can complain to a little bit about how hard things are. And you want them to be able to come to you about that so that they don't go to their colleagues instead and create an environment where everyone is complaining behind your back. So make sure that they know your door is open and that they can come talk to you and they can say how hard and frustrating things are, and that you will say, yeah, that's really tough, and this is awful. We need to get through this together, and we'll be so glad when we're out the other side of it. They need to be allowed to feel that they can tell you about those frustrations and that you're going to allow them to feel those feelings. It's also important to make sure that in adversity, you are positive and you are solution focused. So you're acknowledging the difficulties that your team is experiencing, but you yourself are not sitting around saying, man, this sucks. I hate that we have to work on this. Oh, this is terrible, because you're the leader. And when you lose your motivation, your team's motivation is going to vanish right along with yours. So you always need to keep that positivity up. If there are problems, it's really important to avoid blame. It's easy to say, all right, well, you were supposed to do that and you didn't do it, so now we've ground to a halt. Instead, focus on learning. Do we need to be having meetings more regularly? Do we need to be having people work together in pairs in order to have more accountability for reaching goals? Is the motivation system I created not really a very motivating system? Is there some other barrier that I don't know about? Ask questions, especially open-ended questions, and encourage ideas, contributions, suggestions, so that you can keep your plan live. You can keep it active and changing so that it's going to work and help you reach your goal by your deadline and have your measurable outcomes occur. And when your staff give you feedback, take the time to think about what they say. Sometimes that even means saying, this is a really great idea and I feel like I need some time to think about it, so I'm going to check back with you tomorrow about it. And always close the loop. Get back to people. Tell them you heard them. Tell them you thought about what they told you, and tell them what you're going to do about it so that they see you as an active and engaged part of making this plan come to fruition. True or false? A vision and a goal are more or less the same thing. You're moving right along through this course. You've just completed the plan, bringing your goal to life. Don't hesitate to call us if you have any questions at training@bossnet.org.